Hello students. In the last lecture we have studied about the continuous charge distribution, and as you know, the continuous charge distribution were of three types: the linear charge distribution, surface charge distribution and volume charge distribution. Now we will find out the electric field due to continuous charge distribution. We have found the electric field intensity using the Coulomb's law for a discrete charge distribution. So we have found electric field for a point charge, electric field due to system of charges by using the superposition principle. Now how to find out the electric field intensity due to continuous charge distribution? The continuous charge distribution may be linear charge distribution or surface charge or a volume charge distribution. So the method almost remains same, only the symbol and the distribution of the charges will change. Let us see how to find out the electric field intensity due to linear charge distribution. Now the linear charge distribution was defined as when the charges are distributed over the length of the wire. So when we take a one-dimensional object on which the charges are distributed on a surface, then it was a linear charge distribution. So let us consider a linear charge distribution. Now this is our Cartesian coordinate system. We have a linear charge distribution. So let us take a wire which is infinitely long. The infinitely long is shown by the dotted line. The charges are distributed over it. Let the length of the wire be L. So the length of the wire is small l. We have to find out the electric field intensity at point P, whose position vector can be given by r vector. So let point P be the let P be the point whose position vector is r vector. We have to find out electric field intensity at this point due to linear charge distribution. Now what is the first step? While we are dealing with the continuous charge distribution, the entire distribution or the entire object on which charges are distributed should be divided into the small element such that each element tends to 0. Now this is an example of a linear charge distribution. Let us divide this entire wire into small elements. So this is one element should be equal, this is another element, this is another element. So these are the small element. Consider any one small element. The elements are drawn like this, a small portion of that wire. Now this element, let us take this element. Let its position vector be r dash vector. So this, if I change the element, the distribution of the charge may also change if it is a non-uniform charge distribution. So each element, the element are of identical sizes. Say 1 centimeter, 1 mm, very small. But the charge distribution on it may be different if it is a non-uniform charge distribution. So the position vector changes for each element. So the linear charge density should be the function of r dash. Let the distance between this element and this point be denoted by rp vector. Any symbol you can take it. So we have taken it rp vector, and let the direction be denoted by rp cap. So this is the method to find out the continuous charge distribution. First, the entire shape or the given distribution is divided into small element. This element is called line element, denoted by dl vector, because the direction of each element will keep on changing. So dl vector, let the amount of charge on it is dq, which again keeps on changing. So first step is divide the distribution into a small parts, name them. Here it is a linear charge density or linear charge distribution. We name it a line element dl having a charge dq. Now the first step is define the linear charge density. So linear charge density was denoted by lambda. Now here if I take a different element will have a different charge distribution, different q. So lambda is a function of r dash. So if I change the element, some element will have more charge, some will have less charge. So the lambda for non-uniform distribution, if you remember, we have written delta q upon delta L. And if delta L tends to 0, we write dl. So lambda is dq by dl. This is our equation 1. So first step is to divide this element, entire distribution, into the small element. Then we define the linear charge density. Now it is very simple. We have to find out the electric field intensity at point P. So we already know the formula for electric field intensity at any point due to the small amount of charge dq. So here dq is a source, and here at point P we will keep a test charge. So according to Coulomb's law, or the electric field intensity at point P due to line element dl vector having charge dq is given by, now since the distribution, the element is small, the charge distribution is very less, so I write dE vector. If the charge distribution is somewhat larger, I can write delta Q upon delta L also, then it becomes delta E. Now this formula becomes K source upon distance between test and source. So that is denoted by RP. So RP square, and we denote this unit vectors. Let us denote this unit vector as R cap P. So this is the direct application, or direct we are applying the formula. Now this is the electric field intensity at point P due to the line element. So this is our equation number 2. Now I substitute dq can be written as lambda, which is a function of r dash, into dl. So substitute equation 1. So dE vector can be written as k lambda r dash dl upon rp square rp cap. So this is the electric field intensity at point P. Now I want to find out the total electric field intensity at point P due to the entire wire. So total electric field intensity at point P can be obtained by integrating equation, let us name this as equation number 3, by integrating equation 3 with proper limits. So clearly we see here that dE, or the electric field intensity, depends on the lambda and dl. So electric field intensity becomes the function of the length of the wire, which is, suppose I take the length of the wire is small l. So I will integrate this equation with the proper limit where the length of the wire will start from origin, or say 0 to the length whatever is given. So this equation 3 can be written as electric field intensity at point P. So I am writing is a function of r vector which gives the position of point P. Integration, I write here L, which will be read as the line integration. So this substituting, so line integration of K lambda r dash dl rp cap upon rp square. So this will be, if the limit is given, we can integrate this equation, and this is how we find out the electric field intensity at point P when the distribution is linear or due to linear charge distribution. Similarly, if it is a surface charge distribution or a volume charge distribution, we keep on doing the same method, only the symbols will change. Now let us consider the diagram for a surface charge distribution, and let us see what changes you have to make in this. So now I take the distribution as a surface charge distribution. So let us consider any surface or a two-dimensional figure, and I have to find out again the point P remains same, whose position vector is r vector. Now I divide this entire surface into the small elements. So this is divided into small elements. Now suppose I consider this element. So this element will be referred as dA vector, area element, and the charge on it is dq, and again its position vector is, say, r dash. Now I join this and name it rp vector, and same, only the figure has changed. Now instead of linear charge density, we have a surface charge density, so I change this symbol sigma, and here it becomes dA. Similarly, this equation remains same. Here it becomes sigma into dA. Then again the total electric field intensity, it becomes S. It will be read as surface charge. Integration will be with respect to surface or with respect to area. So it will be read as surface integration. In the place of lambda sigma, in the place of dl, we have dA, that is an area element. So the derivation and the steps remain same. Similarly, if you have a volume charge distribution, I will change the diagram. Now I have a three-dimensional figure. So let us consider one cube. Again the point P, position vector r vector. Now I draw a small cube inside it. This is small cube. It will be denoted by volume element dV. Again the charge is dq. So here actually we have a small cube, like a dice. So the repetition of the dice will give you a cube. Now this have a position vector r dash. Again this is your rp. Again in the place of a linear charge density, we have a volume charge density, which is denoted by rho. In the place of dA, we have a volume element dV. So we change the symbols here. This step remains same. Now we have a volume integration, capital V. In the place of sigma, we have rho. In the place of area, we have dV. So this is how we do the electric field intensity due to continuous charge distribution. Only the step is whatever the object is given on which the charges are uniformly distributed. Charges are distributed on the surface. It may be non-uniform, uniform. If it is uniform, then there is no need to divide this into a small element that we have seen in last lecture. Simply you can apply the formula, but for non-uniform distribution, the entire surface has to be divided into small elements, line element, surface element or volume element. Then we define the densities, then electric field intensity due to that small element, and then we do the integration and find out the resultant electric field intensity at that point. So this is how we find the electric field intensity due to continuous charge distribution. Now our next topic is Gauss law. Now Gauss law is also used to find out the electric field intensity which has some symmetry. So we will see by the application of the Gauss law, it becomes far more easier to find out the electric field intensity. So what is the use of a Gauss law? Gauss law is used to find E vector or electric field intensity due to some symmetry. We will say what this due to some symmetry exactly mean. Now in order to state a Gauss law, let us consider a plus Q charge. Now this is a plus Q charge. Let us assume that this plus Q charge is at the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system. Now in order to find out, in order to prove the Gauss law, we take one imaginary surface. We have to consider one imaginary surface. This imaginary surface is known as the Gaussian surface. Generally, this surface is chosen in such a way that it encloses the charge. तो गॉस लॉ लगाने के लिए या गॉस लॉ प्रूव करने के लिए हमें एक इमेजिनरी सरफेस लेना है. This imaginary surface should be in such a way that it encloses the charge. Now, if I take a charge, say in 3 dimension or in a space, the surface should be spherical because then only this charge will be enclosed inside it. So let us assume a spherical Gaussian surface. So for our convenience, we have taken the spherical Gaussian surface. Later on we will see the shape and the size of this surface will not make any difference to the Gauss law. So whatever result we will get, it will not depend on the shape and the size of this surface. Now this is an imaginary surface, so we have assumed a spherical Gaussian surface in such a way that the charge which we have considered comes out to be at the center, or it is at the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system. The origin is at the center of the sphere. So what is this? This is a Gaussian surface. So in order to prove a Gauss law, we have considered this imaginary surface. This imaginary surface is known as Gaussian surface, and even in the application of the Gauss law we will consider such surface. Now this surface is purely an imaginary. Here the surface is chosen in such a way that the charge comes out to be at its center. This is a spherical Gaussian surface and imaginary surface. Now let the radius of this sphere be denoted by small r. So this is the radius of a Gaussian surface. Now in order to find out the electric field intensity, we will divide this Gaussian surface into a small elements. So this is one element, this is another element, this is third element. So if you have a Gaussian surface to be spherical, these are called the elements of the Gaussian surface, or sometimes I may refer it as a Gaussian element. So again, in continuous charge distribution we have divided. So this Gaussian surface is divided into small element. This is the division of the Gaussian surface. So I consider one surface or a Gaussian element. Let the area of this is denoted by delta S. Now I have to take a area vector. So clearly it will be radially outward. So if I consider this element, this will be radially outward, this will be radially outward, radially outward, radially outward, like this. These are the area vectors of Gaussian element. This entire is a Gaussian surface. Now this is denoted by delta S. Say delta S vector. Now if we have a plus charge, we have seen that the electric flux for a positive charge enclosed in the surface is radially outward. So if you remember, it was big arrow, small arrow, the length indicate the intensity. So field lines are radially outward. If you have a source negative, the fields line are radially inward. So here we have taken plus charge, which is enclosed in an imaginary Gaussian surface. So let us consider this as a point P. Again, the position vector is r vector. So the point P has a position vector r vector, and its magnitude will be the radius. So if I consider any element here, its position vector will change, but its magnitude will be equal to the radius of the Gaussian surface. Now the field is radially outward. So at any point, the field is radially outward. It means the angle between E vector and the area element is 0. So we are going to take the help of the definition of the electric flux at any point. Now let us see what is the electric flux associated with the point P. Flux associated with point P means the number of field lines passing through this area, which is held normal. Now this area is held normal. So if you take any element, E vector and delta S vector will be in the same direction. So this is the advantage of this spherical Gaussian surface. Now the flux linked with point P. Now this is a small element. So electric flux linked with point P is delta phi. Now if the element is very small, I may use ds also if the element is very small. So delta phi is equal to E dot delta S vector. That is what we have studied about the electric flux. Now this is equal to the flux linked with the point P. Point P is position vector is r vector, and the magnitude of the distance is the radius. So how the theory goes on, initially we have taken plus q charge at the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system. So consider a point charge at the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system as shown in the figure. Now consider an imaginary Gaussian surface of radius r in such a way that a charge is enclosed in this Gaussian surface. Divide the Gaussian surface into the small element. One of this element is have the area vector delta S vector. The fields are radially outward, so the direction is same. So delta phi will be equal to E delta S, where we assumed theta is equal to 0 degree. So it is E delta S cos theta, cos 0 is 1. Now the electric field intensity at point P will be K source upon distance between test and this is our test charge, this is our source charge, r square, into delta S. So this is equation 1. Now I want to find out the total electric field intensity or the total flux. This is the flux linked with point P only. Then we have another point, say R. we have another point, say X. Now I have to find out the total flux linked with the entire surface. So total electric flux linked with surface is, say, phi. That should be equal to summation of delta phi. It should be the summation of delta phi or all delta S. So this is delta S, delta S, delta S, delta S, entire surface. Substituting this value here. So it becomes summation of all delta S kq upon r square delta S. Therefore, the total flux can be written as kq upon r square, which is a constant term, and the summation should be of delta S all delta S. Now delta S, delta S, delta S, delta S, so it becomes this entire surface. Now the surface area of the sphere is 4 pi r square. So r square multiplied by 4 pi r square, where summation of delta S is taken as 4 pi r square. So the flux can be easily found. Now in the place of K, I can write 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. So 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q upon r square 4 pi r square. So this 4 pi r square get cancelled. So we are left with q upon epsilon naught. So this is the Gauss law, which also states that the electric flux linked with any closed surface is equal to the ratio of the charge enclosed by the closed surface to epsilon naught. So now we have two definitions for the flux. One is E dot delta S and other is Q upon epsilon naught. Now here the charge enclosed in the Gaussian surface was a point charge. Suppose I have another plus Q charge enclosed in it. So it will be 2 times Q. If I have 3 charge, it will be 3Q by epsilon. Now you see the mathematical steps. We don't have the shape or the size of, we don't have any quantity which is related with the shape and size. We don't have a radius here. It is simply Q. Q is constant given. The source was given to you. Epsilon naught, it is constant. So the flux linked with the closed surface or Gaussian surface does not depend on the shape and size, because it is the summation of the area of the surface we have chosen. Now instead of a spherical surface, we can choose any shape and size, but we have to find out the electric field intensity due to some symmetry. For easy calculation, we choose only those surfaces whose areas are known to us, because in the place of summation S, I have to write the area of surface. If I take irregular, then there is a method to find out the area of such irregular surface also. But we are taking this a proper symmetrical shape for our convenience, so calculation becomes easier. So this is what the Gauss law is all about. It gives you the flux associated with the closed surface. Now we know that it depends on the charge Q enclosed. So in general terms, I can write the flux is equal to summation Q upon epsilon naught. So here I have taken only 1 plus Q charge. So I got the answer plus Q charge upon epsilon. If there is another plus Q charge, I will get 2Q, 3 charge, 3Q. The shape and the size of the Gaussian surface is not important. So what the Gauss law states, now we write the statement, the total electric flux, linked with closed surface, which we named as a Gaussian surface. So the total electric flux linked with closed surface is equal to the ratio of total charge, or algebraic sum of the charges is equal to the ratio of total charge enclosed by closed surface. You have to remember, you have to take the summation q which are enclosed, which are inside the surface. So it is equal to the ratio of total charge enclosed by the closed surface to epsilon naught permittivity of the free space. If the medium is changed, say the medium is kerosene or a water, then instead of epsilon naught you have to write out epsilon, which becomes the permittivity of that medium. So this is the Gauss law. Now overall, now we got the three equations where the flux is associated with the charge also now, as well as electric field intensity. So in general, the electric flux, if you remember, we have written electric flux as a surface integration E dot ds. This was what we have studied in electric flux. Now this flux is also written as summation q upon epsilon naught. So if I want to find out the electric flux and the charge is given, I can directly apply this pair of equations. If I want to find out the electric field intensity with the help of q, I can use this pair of equation, second pair. And if I want to find out the electric flux with the help of electric field intensity given, then I will use this pair. So we have a three pairs of equation where we can find out the flux, field or a charge. They are associated with each other by this equation. So this is the Gauss law for electrostatic. It is the ratio of the total charge enclosed by the closed surface to epsilon naught. We will see why we are taking only the charges enclosed inside it. Say if there are, this is q1, q2, both are positive. So in the place of this summation, I will write q1 plus q2 upon epsilon naught. Suppose there is a negative charge minus q3. So from this 2 plus charge, the field lines are originating outward. To negative, the field are radially inward. So the summation becomes law of conservation of charge, q1 plus q2 minus q3. So this is how the summation q will be calculated. If the charge is positive, so if all the charge enclosed by the Gaussian surface is positive, so say this is q1, q2 minus q3 minus q4. So flux will become q1 plus q2 plus minus q3 directly minus q3 minus q4 divided by epsilon naught, where positive charge, positive sign indicate the fields are originating outward or the flux is positive, and minus indicate the flux is negative. So this will be the total flux. Now we have to take only those charges which are enclosed in the Gaussian surface. So we will see in the next lecture why you have to consider only charges which are enclosed in the Gaussian surface. Outside, if any charge is outside the Gaussian surface, say q5, and here we have plus q1 plus q2 minus q3 minus q4, then we will not consider this plus q5 while applying this summation q upon epsilon naught. So there are some points related with the Gauss law that you have to remember while applying the Gauss law for electrostatic. So this is what we have for today's lecture. Have a good day.